The franchise as development tool. This presentation covers the use of the franchise model to succeed in the delivery of social services and social assistance, as well as in the achievement of the development goals. The presentation will be divided in two parts, the first one focusing the analysis of the franchise model, its strengths and weaknesses, its advantages and shortcomings. The second part will review the consequences of the application of that model to the delivery of social services and social assistance through the social franchises, and to the achievement of development goals through the social franchise enterprises, and how the use of this model limits or enhances the results. To begin with the franchise model as it is applied in the private sector, the project starts as any project where an individual or company detects a specific need by a certain market. The enterprise defines what the final product or service will be, decides and locates the necessary inputs, and establishes the sets of processes that will lead to the production of a consistent good or service and its timely delivery to the targeted public or market at a viable price. If the good or service fulfills the detected needs, the market will start growing, and with it, the company's interest to further extend its market. However, this growth will in a way distance the enterprise from its targeted public. The company will have to put in place systems to manage larger teams and workforce, extend distribution networks, define transportation and delivery, follow up collections, and put in place controls at every step in order to maintain its capacity to deliver consistent goods or services. This in turn will require that a part of the cash flow is now allocated to the management of the growing operation, detracting it from its investment in bringing in new clients and markets. Distance in this context does not only refer to geography, but also to different market niches, to new distribution networks, to overcome entry barriers, etc. Therefore, at some stage, the enterprise will consider its association with third parties to reduce that distance and to enter those new markets and further expand its sales. This may be done through agents, branches, etc., but at some stage, depending on the sector and the good or service, the franchise alternative will be considered. Through it, the entrepreneur becomes a franchisor and enters in a commercial agreement with a third party, the franchisee, who is closer to its market and in a better position to deliver the franchisor's goods or services. The franchisee obtains the know-how to produce and deliver a proven and successful product or service to this market, avoids a steep learning curve, and secures a certain exclusivity to sell the right good or service in a given geographical area with limited competition. The franchisee sees these advantages and how all of them result in a reduction of the level of risk of the investment, a major component to consider when one invests its own capital in a business. The added value of the know-how is also accepted, and the franchisee is willing to pay, at least initially, franchise fees. In turn, the franchisor achieves an extension of its market, overcoming the barriers and capitalizing its know-how through the franchise fee. But also, the franchisor avoids the capital expenditure needed to serve this new market, liberating these resources and making them available for other purposes and necessary investments. It is a win-win situation. In any case, the franchisor retains the leadership of the brand marketing. Marketing was redefined not so long ago by the American Marketing Association as the activity, set of institutions and processes for creating, communicating, delivering, and exchanging offerings that have value for customers, clients, partners, and society at large. The main conclusion of the above definition is that marketing is no longer a function, but an educational process. And by driving and implementing this educational process throughout the overall franchise, the franchisor creates value for the stakeholders and consolidates the capacity of the organization to continue doing so. As mentioned, the value is created in the first stage by defining the good or service and then creating a set of procedures, standards, training and built-in monitoring systems that will enable the franchisor to achieve consistency in the production and timely delivery of the good or service at a market price. The above is then adapted to enable its replication and remote implementation with no detriment to the end good or service. The monitoring systems provide data to establish the benchmarks, which in turn enable a constant evaluation of the franchisee's performance and the early detection of new variables affecting the expected outcome. From the franchisee's point of view, The know-how received allows the new entity to become operational in a very short time, and as such, to deliver the goods or services to a specific market and to generate revenue and results almost immediately. The franchisor, in turn, not only receives the expected growth with no further investment, but as we saw, secures the consolidation of the brand and its perception by the market. While the above explains why the franchisees are successful in the first stage of a startup and an early operation, these elements are not enough to succeed in the further development of the franchise. Let us not forget the franchisee is an entrepreneur as well, and once the training and the procedures and systems are in place, they will be taken for granted and considered of a lesser value. The franchisee will then reassess the situation and start to wonder if he or she would not be doing better outside the franchise. As a result, the franchise model requires that the franchisor continues to provide the franchisee with added value on a regular basis. Whether it be through bulk purchasing, benefiting from economies of scale, and making available to the franchisee the necessary inputs at better prices, better payment conditions, tailoring delivery, or by securing the procurement and provisioning of standardized inputs and supplies to permit the franchisee to better control production costs and achieve more consistent end good or service. In any case, the franchisee must receive added value from the franchisor. Franchisee may also receive added value from other franchisees, and thanks to the leads and referrals made by the network, each franchisee may enlarge its client base. Or it may be simply that the added value is provided by the market's perception of the brand. Whatever the mix of these or other elements or services provided by the franchisor or the brand, the franchisee must perceive the value for the fees paid to the franchisor. And as we saw, the fees received enable the franchisor to contribute to the solidity of the brand and to continue creating value for customers, clients, partners, and society at large, as the definition states. By succeeding in the above, the franchise attains a new stage in which the brand and the franchisee network are consolidated, and both the franchisor and the franchisees will benefit from a rapid expansion of the overall brand and operation through new franchisees. Consequently, any system that enables a rapid extension of the brand will be well perceived by the market and the stakeholders. At this new stage, thanks to the experience in the management of existing franchisees and the monitoring, performance assessments, and benchmarking established for internal purposes, the franchisor can now compile this information to prepare feasibility and viability studies for new franchisees. This information may be also conveyed to banks and credit institutions, which in turn may now compare it with their internal information and to the benchmarks they apply to the respective industry. Consequently, the banks will then be capable to assess risk and to analyze credit operations based on these standards. Resulting from this, the franchisor may negotiate standard form agreements with credit institutions and in this way make available to franchisees financing opportunities that otherwise would not be at their reach. Indeed, in the same way that the franchise overall size enables to secure economies of scale and to propose better conditions for the franchisee in the procurement of their supplies, the franchise internal monitoring system and benchmarking in place can be used as well to the benefit of the franchisees by rendering the business bankable. And to achieve bankability is a major milestone for any business. To summarize, the franchise model has proven its validity by its widespread use and presence in so many activities, sectors, and countries. Its strengths are probably the same as its weaknesses. It is based in the capacity to replicate its components, to incorporate varied stakeholders to a common goal, and to deliver value at each stage. But to replicate means to produce a replica, an exact copy. Hence, a franchise is successful when all franchisees offer a consistent product or service at any and all outlets, and this can only be achieved if the franchisor retains the capacity to define policies, set guidelines, establish procedures, and impose systems in order to maintain the overall structure. The franchise must be run as a vertical organization. The above allows the franchise to extend its footprint very fast with limited investment. However, to consolidate the franchisor must invest in providing added value to the franchisees so as to keep them part of the franchise and continue collecting the franchise fee. Hence, franchisor and franchisees are interdependent and their respective role and revenues must be balanced. The model shows its fragility when the balance is lost. It may come from lack of management procedures or systems that leads to inconsistency, which in turn damages the brand and reduces its value for the franchisees. Or it may come by a fee structure that is not in line with what the franchisee receives. In any case, non-performing franchises lead too quickly to a fragmentation of the brand image, a progressive non-compliance with the procedures, and/or the non-payment of the fees of the part of the franchisees. This situation limits the capacity of the franchisor to provide services affecting all franchisees, and it is followed by an abandonment of the franchisees and the interruption of the capacity to sell under the brand. In spite of the above, it is a very powerful model that enables the fastest growth, and it works at its best when the product or service can be standardized and its characteristics require that it is offered to the market on site, through outlets evenly distributed to cover specific areas of influence. Once we have covered the main elements of the franchise, the second part of the presentation will review the consequences of the application of that model to the delivery of social services and social assistance through social franchises and to the achievement of development goals through the social franchise enterprises, and how the use of this model limits or enhances the expected results. The application of the franchise model to the delivery of social services through the social franchise succeeds in benefiting from all its advantages. The social franchise consists in replicating an outlet to deliver social services and social assistance, and it has been applied, among others, to local clinics, soup kitchens, and training services for the unemployed. The social franchise may apply the general principles of the franchise model and, after detecting the social need and defining the way to provide the social services to remediate it, can put in place the standardization, training tools, and built-in monitoring, creating in this way an efficient process to deliver such services through a set of outlets located where such delivery is needed. It also enables the entry of multiple types of stakeholders, individuals, organizations, donors, volunteers, to be incorporated in the delivery of the services, and it allows a rapid mobilization of resources and extension of the footprint that may in turn be reduced at the same speed the need for assistance is reduced. As such, they have proven very solid in emergency and disaster assistance. Through the rapid deployment and effective local impact, the social franchise does succeed in providing the social services and benefiting the targeted public. Furthermore, social franchisor generally excels in marketing of their objectives and is capable of generating such mobilization through communication. However, the franchise model is not so effective when the franchise reaches a stage in which it needs consolidation. The social franchise is based on the delivery of services and not in a transaction. Thus, each franchisee is freer to define what is the end good or service that will be delivered, and will progressively tend to consider the terms of reference and its mandate as a menu from which to select the services to be provided. As a result, the social franchise supplies its target public with a fragmented proposal that may differ significantly from one franchisee to another. Also, the lack of transaction at market prices means the social franchisor has no revenue coming from its network, becoming then permanently dependent on donors to carry on its activities and forced to allocate further resources to seek funding. Resulting from the above, social franchisees may depend too much on the volunteers and non-professional staff, which makes it difficult to achieve consistency in the delivery of services. Indeed, the franchisees often find themselves in a situation that overcomes the response capacity and/or for which they lack the training to monitor or even to provide the services sought. Thus, it is not uncommon that each franchisee developed its own version of the mandate received, and its specifics may depend on the characteristics of their own target public, the professional training of the staff delivering such services, or a number of other variables. And the variation in time of these elements will lead to a different interpretation of what the mandate is. This pattern applies also to the monitoring of the activities, making it even more difficult for the social franchisors to prompt reporting, assess performance, enforce policies and systems. The above leads to a further fragmentation of the offer, which is clearly perceived by the target public. Hence, the social franchisor, which already has a limited capacity to enforce systems on a permanent basis, sees how the franchisees may not carry the reporting as they are required, how the fragmentation of its proposal is detected by its targeted public, rendering the activity of each franchisee more difficult, and how finding and negotiating with donors to obtain the necessary funds to operate becomes increasingly more time-consuming. This will no doubt limit the capacity to lead the marketing and create value, and losing the grip and the power to communicate with its targeted public will aggravate the malfunction. All the above generates doubts about the validity of the social franchise model to deliver certain types of services. As studies from the Indian government show, social franchises have proven less efficient than public organizations for the delivery of permanent sanitary and health assistance, the reason being that the latter have a clear assignation of policies as well as monitoring and reporting systems in place that have to be followed, and permit a better use of the resources and a more efficient application of the policies. However, these same characteristics make social franchises very effective to provide the type of social services and social assistance that is based in local resources. Under this scenario, the franchisee benefits initially from training provided by the social franchisor to subsequently run his or her own operation, seeking local resources and providing social services and social assistance locally. This local component enables all the flexibility as its position in the community gives the franchisee the access to local donors who will oversee the franchisee's performance. The social franchisor still has to find funding to maintain a limited structure to establish and support new franchisees and, most importantly, to lead the marketing of the brand. The objective of the social franchise enterprise is to serve the market a set of goods or services that will contribute to the development of the target public market, and to do so by creating a self-sustainable activity based on private initiative. A good example are the telephone communications kiosks under study by the World Bank since 1995. By providing access to communications, the kiosks are achieving a major shift in the way individuals can manage their contacts, their payments, their time, their life. The opportunity and part of the developmental component of the social franchise enterprise is to provide a good or service currently unreachable but in demand to a target public or market willing to pay for it. The reasons why the target markets are not yet served are varied: lack of infrastructure, distribution networks, and/or efficient collection systems, or simply because the public sector has focused in other policies and the private sector has not yet assessed a profitable or sustainable alternative. The challenge then is to establish a system or model that succeeds in overcoming the difficulties to serve these markets, to do so in rapid expansion of its reach and footprint, and to achieve it through a self-sustainable activity, essentially quite the same accomplishment as that of the franchise model. The social franchise enterprise achieves its developmental goals serving markets a service or good in demand while making the process itself a source of development. As we saw, the first stage of the franchise is based in the product or service definition, its standardization, the establishment of training and training tools, built-in monitoring, etc., which to be implemented require human resource development and organizational development. All seems quite close to capacity building, generally defined as the development of conditions that allow individual participants to build and enhance existing knowledge and skills, and will allow individuals to engage in the process of learning and adapting to change. The second stage of the development of a franchise leading to its consolidation is linked to bulk purchasing, standardization of inputs and supplies, brand definition, and interaction with network and networks clients. Again, seems a very efficient approach to the developmental principle of access to market, both in the input and provision as well as in sales. The final stage of a franchise leads to bankability due to its capacity to provide the credit institutions with standardized information and benchmarks that enable them to assess credit operations. It is important to note that bankability is a term which is not linked to profitability but to certainty. Indeed, most of us live in countries in which large companies access credit markets easily, in spite of having subventions as a significant part of their income. Whether in local transportation or agriculture, many companies receive subventions, and it does not represent an obstacle to the lending banks. Therefore, the social franchise is capable of incorporating grants, subventions, and other sources of non-operational income to its model, and still be considered bankable, thanks to its capacity to provide the sort of information credit institutions demand. Again, this approach is the materialization of the general developmental principle of access to credit. As a result, the social franchise enterprise has the elements to succeed in serving its target market with goods or services required to attain better living conditions, carrying simultaneously a significant development task by providing capacity building, access to market, and access to credit to the network of franchisees. As covered in the analysis of the model, the transaction enables the self-sustainability of the franchisees, but it also serves as a barometer of the efficiency of the social franchise enterprise. The collection of the franchise fee will enable the social franchise enterprise to lead the marketing, further extend the network and support new franchisees, and thus will also enable other local communities to have access to goods or services in demand. The model is very flexible and can incorporate the use of grants or revolving funds to support the startup of new franchisees, and can even contemplate the franchisee becoming an independent company after a given time. The key to it all is that in the process of serving a previously unserved market, it develops a community by creating self-sustainable units that will network with each other, bringing other opportunities to all the communities involved. It develops new markets. As a final note, the development of rural electrification and independent mobile rural telephone networks are optimal fields for the social franchise enterprise model. Thank you for viewing this presentation. Any notes or inquiries can be addressed to inquiries@whatdate.com.